So, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. My name is John Lunn, aka Jonnychipz, and in this video series, we talk all things cloud with experts and advocates from right across our industry, covering a wide variety of topics from skills and careers through to technical overviews and soft skills. So, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or LinkedIn, thanks so much for tuning in. It's really appreciated. Please do take part in the chat below. Drop us a comment, a like, and a subscribe. Well, that would be absolutely awesome. Okay, so my next guest speaker is a senior Dynamics 365 consultant at Agilysys at the moment. He's a blogger, a public speaker, and he's got a huge passion for inclusivity, accessibility, and mental health awareness. So based out of the heart of the Midlands, that's Rugby in the UK, I'm super excited to welcome my next guest on In Conversation With, Mr. Mike Hartley. And hello, Mike. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hello there, John. Thanks for having me. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Like it's like take two of the introduction. This is let's not kid ourselves. Like I said earlier, Mike, just getting over a dose of the lurgy, which I know a lot of us have had across the globe at the moment, it seems. So, but apart from that, all's good. All's good. Work's busy, and family life is picking up in terms of kids' activities are getting back to normal. So, all good. So look, we've got some awesome subject matters to talk around this evening. Really excited to kind of finally say hello to you, Mike. But look, before we get into those areas, I don't know if you want to give yourself a little bit of a broader introduction. Let us know a little bit about yourself, Mike. That would be cool.
Yeah, cool. My name is Mike Hartley. I've been working in IT for far too many years. It gets to something when you're talking to people in the community and you're like, yeah, I've been working with IT for longer than you've been alive. And you then really start feeling the age. I got my first computer. It was a 1979 Commodore VIC-20. So that probably gives you a bit of a feel for age-wise, and really that was me. That was me tech all the way through. And I mean, through my career, I've pretty much done all the jobs. I've done the developer job, I've done the sysadmin jobs, I've done the technician jobs, I've done the whole purchasing, buying, the building of systems, the delivery of systems, you name it, I've kind of done it. And then I kind of fell into this crazy world of dynamics when I worked at a startup a good few years back. Thought nothing of it. Went on, did some more sysadmin stuff when the startup failed, and then ended up back in dynamics. And it just then kind of really morphed into this whole thing with Dynamics Power Platform, and just it started to become a real passion, getting involved with all the community and everybody else, and then starting to talk about mental health and me being open about my own challenges and battles, which then led on to accessibility. And I just seem to be on this constant journey of never staying still, never stopping, constantly learning. And I just love it. I just absolutely love it. And I mean, I'm a massive petrol head, as is my wife and eldest son. I'm a geek, as you can probably tell by all the stuff in the background here. And yeah, I'm just trying to enjoy life as much as I can at the moment these days. I've kind of reached that age now where it's just like, you know what, I'm old enough and ugly enough that I'm just gonna do what I want, say what I want, and do it in a right way, but just
enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really cool, Mike. I think, like you say, a lot of people, like, I'm probably not a million miles away from your generation, to be honest, Mike, that some of those things hit a bit too close to the to the nerve of my own thoughts and feelings. You think, when did this age thing become a thing? It's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
But like you, Mike, I've tried my hardest to kind of stay on top of things from a tech point of view, go with the flow, follow your nose in terms of passion and enthusiasm. And I mean, maybe we'll turn our attention a little bit to the space that you're working in at the moment is Dynamics 365. Now, personally, I'm vaguely aware of what Dynamics 365 has to offer in terms of all the various plugins and components and modules and things like that. But it's certainly not a tech area I'm overly familiar with, to put it bluntly. I mean, do you want to give us, that quick, couple of minute overview pitch of where Dynamics 365 fits into the whole Microsoft ecosystem?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, Dynamics started as Dynamics CRM. It was the customer relationship management system, and I landed in it in version 3. Taught myself because there was nothing else I could do. Built a system that integrated with wearable devices kind of before wearable devices were a thing. And then it just rolled over, and Dynamics itself, it's become this whole massive suite of products as Microsoft have built out and acquired other firms. And so you've got your ERP systems, you've got your finance systems, you've got human resources, you've now got marketing in there, you've got customer service, then you've now got all your omni-channel stuff, which is stuff that I really need to try and get my head around. But it's all that stuff of being able to phone up and talk to an automated agent who can respond intelligently to you, but pass you through to a human being. And you can engage via Teams chat, web chat, and just seamlessly transition. And I mean, it's getting really quite exciting because for the last sort of year or two, Microsoft have been starting to make a lot of noise about really throwing in AI into all the Dynamics stuff that we do. So with Dynamics marketing, applying artificial intelligence as to which emails to send people, with the omni-channel recommending how you go down certain routes with people, and insights and information, and really making that data. And that's kind of where the whole Azure stuff really kicks in with all of its AI skills. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, Dynamics is built on Azure. And I mean, it always kind of makes me laugh because you've got Power Platform, which is the cool kid these days. And I mean, I love Power Platform, but it kind of, it started out at first that Power Platform kind of was built on Dynamics. And now you've got it where it's flipped on its head and it's now Dynamics built on Power Platform.
Right, okay.
The snake's eaten its own tail. But a lot of the terminology is still kind of terminology I've been using for quite a lot of years. But it's all underpinned by Azure services, databases, platform. So it's one of those things where the Microsoft 365 world has become this huge behemoth with a million icons and constant rebrands and renames that none of us can keep our heads wrapped around. But they all hook into each other. They're all connected. There's all there's always something. You can't fully just be a Dynamics person because you still need to know a bit of Azure here and
Mm.
a bit of this, that, and the other. And likewise with a lot of Azure people, they're kind of having to flip into understanding some of the Power Platformy stuff, because you've got Power Automate and Dataverse, and so the streams are crossing quite a lot these days. Even SharePoint people can't get away with it. So
You're right, though. You are right, though, Mike, because I was only speaking, I think, to my last guest. We were talking, I've spoken about it with several guests, actually, but this blurring of lines and blurring of responsibilities is a thing. And you're saying that it's hitting the dynamics disciplines as well.
oh,
Massively.
massively so. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, it seems to be the way of the world at the moment, which kind of, is that point where you say, you've got a passion for technology and you're a lifelong learner and you try to stay on top of things. But I mean, how do you find that, Mike, in terms of not just having to stay on top of the stuff that you need to keep your dynamic skills up to date in the certain areas that you specialize in, but how do you find those other elements of cloud technology, and how do you stay on top of those things personally?
With difficulty, I will be honest. It is a real challenge. I've spoken to quite a few people this last couple of years who are trying to get themselves into Power Platform, because everybody wants to be building apps or bots. Or
it is the cool kid, like you say. It's the cool kid, isn't it? Yeah.
But one of the first things I say to them is, if you're going down this road, you've got to accept that you're not going to learn it today and be able to stop and build a career on what you learned today. You've got to keep learning, because we get the 2 waves every year. We get wave 1 April time onwards. We get wave 2 in October. We get updates that are rolling out constantly, some of which we get told about, some of which happen overnight, and we're just like, whoa, what the heck's just gone on here? And it's you're just constantly keeping moving. And when I kind of skipped from moving out of end user into sort of a consultancy practice role, I said at the time that I knew a lot of people my age who they'd kind of got the pipe and slippers out, and they were like, yeah, I'm going to just milk my knowledge of this old tech that nobody's going to get rid of before I retire. And I was like, no, I'm not a pipe and slippers guy. I want to keep moving. And I kind of likened it to that whole thing that a shark has to keep swimming, because if it stops, it dies. And that's very much it with this Microsoft world of ours. It's just constantly going, constantly reading blogs, keeping in touch with people. But I think the biggest thing for me was learning that I'm never going to learn it all.
And it's almost like an acceptance, isn't it? It's like an acceptance.
And it took me a long while to actually get there. I was sweating hours and hours, reading everything, watching blogs, listening to podcasts, never taking any time to enjoy myself or anything. And honestly, not taking any of the information in, because I was just so bombarded and swamped with info and never getting a chance to put it into practical use, that it just went in one ear and out the other. And that acceptance that I learn what I learn and what I need to do to keep my job going. And I've got probably more than I realize, but I'll go with 20 blogs that I check regularly, or YouTube channels or whatever. I've got a group of people who I really listen to because they're clued up as to what's going on, but they're in the same boat as me in that they know what they know, and they listen to other people for what they don't know. And I I think once you get into that, it's a really good place to be. And then you can actually go, okay, here's what I need to know. This really interests me. I'm going to actually go ahead and learn this as my side fun project kind of thing. And there's some really cool tech out there. There's some really awesome stuff out there that you can get excited about. But if you're trying to consume it all, you're just going to resent it and hate working in it. So I found that for me was the way that I could enjoy my day job and enjoy a tech life as well that really challenges me and gives me so many opportunities.
And I think that, being brutally honest about that whole process with how do you stay on top. I've never known it so harsh, I think, with trying to keep on top of your learnings as it is, as it's been over the last few years, certainly since we've moved over to the cloud way, and this whole kind of, I guess it's that DevOps fail fast mentality and constantly pushing out features and updates. It's great for advances in technology, but then as a somebody that has been a subject matter expert, I guess there's a lot of pressure and a lot of stresses and strains. So being brutally honest, Mike, about I completely echo what you said there. It's very difficult. I have exactly the same things, and I guess this kind of segues into another important topic area we were going to discuss tonight, Mike, and that's this whole concept of mental health. And how does that make people feel when they've got this mounting of stuff that they feel they have to learn? And I echo again, if you're kind of scattergun, if you're kind of not focused, you can quite easily, as I've done in the past, and I still do today, if I'm being honest, you focus on the nice, shiny new tech and go, oh, let me look at that. And you kind of drop your to-do list, and all of a sudden it becomes a little bit of a difficult thing to manage. I mean, what's your experience of that like, Mike, speaking with other people?
Yeah, so I mean, the whole thing with the shiny and that just that's me. I'm off work this week. It's a break. Yeah, it's kind of using up the rest of the annual leave as we all have to do. But it's I've said I've got to catch up on jobs that I've been putting off, or there's just so much I just can't keep track of it. But that whole thing of there's always just more and more and more and more. I've seen people and I've experienced it where you do get mental burnout. You do, the stress will grind you down. There are very, very few people in this world that can just be constantly consuming information and doing nothing else without it taking a toll on their mental health. And I think the last 2 and a bit years with COVID, they've had a massive, massive impact on people's mental health. I mean, the phrase mental health time bomb got thrown around in the news quite a lot, and it really didn't go far enough in stressing how big a deal this was.
Right.
I've got quite complex mental health issues. I had a breakdown in 2007. I've had a couple of other incidents in other years. I take antidepressants and have done since 2007, and quite honestly probably will do for the rest of my life. And it's always a challenge just pushing on, but in the same way as you kind of have to come to that realization with you can't learn it all, most importantly is coming to that realization that you've got to put your mental health as the number one priority. At the end of the day, work will carry on.
Yeah.
Work, if you turn into a blubbering wreck in the corner, and I can say that because I've done that. I've been that blubbering wreck in the corner. If you turn into that person, they're going to find a way to carry on working.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to grind them to a complete halt. Yeah, it'll cause them a bump in the road, but the long-lasting effects on you can be permanent, and they can be devastating. They can lead to anything from you trying to do yourself harm in a short term, ruining relationships, marriages breaking down, relationships breaking down, and then you've then got the sort of ultimate price that sadly some people do pay. And it's something that I remember just before COVID, I was at Ignite London, Microsoft Ignite the Tour London.
Yeah.
And I just put a tweet out there because Brian Dang, who is just one of the gurus of power apps, I'd been really looking forward to meeting him, and he was stood no more than 6 feet away from me. And I just put a tweet out going, I've just chickened out because I got completely stressed out and social anxiety just took over. And that was on day one of the 2 days. And over the next 2 days, I had people coming up to me going, that was really brave. Okay, I didn't think I was being brave. And then I'd have people come up and they'd kind of sidle up next to me on a bench, and they'd kind of be very sneaky and surreptitious, just sliding across. And they'd be like, yeah, I'm the same as you, but I can't be as open as you. And I think it comes down to that whole thing of me being old enough and ugly enough. And I suddenly realized that there is this humongous amount of stigma, and that stigma carries with it a huge amount of pressure and a huge weight, that if you're going through a mental health crisis or a challenging period, having that weight of that stigma pressing down on you as well, it just amplifies what you're going through so much more. So I've been really open, and I will be probably more open than I should be, but I kind of do that to overcompensate for those people that don't feel they can be open.
And do you know what, Mike? I think it's from my perspective, I wouldn't say that I've suffered personally, on a large scale with mental health issues over the years. There've certainly been moments, I think, in life where you're definitely, not in a great place. But I think, so to be able to kind of understand where somebody has been in those dark places or those times in their life where, you've mentioned, Mike, you've had a breakdown. I think people will instantly say it's brave to talk about that, because certainly in the past, that has been a really massively taboo subject to talk about, because people are fearful of being judged, losing jobs, all of these negative connotations. So as an observer of this situation, and of course, being aware of, mental health issues in and around family and friends, I can say that it feels that society has certainly turned that corner magically, that these kind of conversations are able to happen and to be taken with the utmost seriousness that they deserve. And so it's people like you, Mike, I guess, that because you're an advocate and a spokesperson to that extent on these issues, I think it's more power to you. I think it's a great thing to have happen, because like you say, those people that might not be as brave or as confident to say these things as maybe you are, or you've been told that you've done, will be sat there, maybe quietly thinking these things, but they just need to know. And so it's a massive deal for that. I mean, how do you see it like that at the moment? Are there any hurdles in the way for kind of helping people in these positions?
There are still a lot of hurdles. I mean, yes, I think society has turned a corner, but I don't think we've cracked it yet. I think there's still a lot of stigma, and you can see it sometimes in the way that things get played out on things like quiz shows or comedy panel shows. And that's not to be completely down. I love comedy panel shows and quiz shows and stuff, but you just see that there's still some stereotypes and prejudices that still really do exist. And
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
and I mean, I think about whether you're a royalist or a Republican or wherever you sit. I think about just Prince William and Harry, and Prince Harry especially. He's been so open about his challenges with mental health, and there's been elements of like the press and the media that have really laid into him as if to say, you're royal, why do you have mental health issues? You should be better than this. It's like, no. The majority of us will have at some point a mental health incident in our lives. That is unavoidable for unless you are really lucky. It may only be a period of a couple of months, so it might be you've lost a job or a relationship's ended or credit crunch, financial crisis, cost of living rise. That's causing a lot of stress and will be having mental health impacts on people. And for the majority of people, mental health is a temporary thing. For some, it's a lifelong battle. I fit in that camp, but then I never do things by halves. So if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it properly. But yeah, it is better than it was, and people are able to be a lot more open now. But if you work at smaller companies, you're likely to still face a lot more of that stigma than you are at, say, some of the bigger companies where they feel a more social responsibility thing. So, yeah.
But I guess even conversations like we're having, Mike, hopefully it's to kind of just advocate for that, that it's good to talk kind of message that, if you are struggling, if you are going through tough times, and I always do try as an individual and personally, if ever I see those posts going across social media, whether they're friends, family, or people that I don't know, and I see that they're, of that slight negative, clearly something is not great with that person, I will always reach out. I will always, either if I can't direct message the person because I don't know them, I will drop them a thing. Look, just pick up the phone, speak. I think that's a powerful thing. From, like I say, from speaking with friends and family members that have had problems in the past that has helped them. And I guess, would you have more, like I say, I'm speaking purely from my own personal experiences, Mike, but I mean, as somebody in that space that has, clearly you've done a lot of, you've had a lot of conversations with people. Have you got any pointers or help or advice for people in those situations?
I think the three most powerful words at times are, how are you?
Sure.
Genuinely, truthfully, honestly, during first year of COVID, which I'm having to stretch my mind because time is a blur.
Yeah.
A friend picked up that I was not quite coming across as myself on WhatsApp. And it was a big group of us. There was a lot of us in that WhatsApp chat. And he just messaged me, "How are you?" And coming from that person, it caused me to completely stop. And I just went, I'm in a really bad place. He called me up straight away and he said, "Right, give me 5 minutes. I need to rearrange some meetings."
Yeah.
And then he was on the phone with me. And I later found out those meetings were with people who were very, very senior people at places, but he prioritized me. And for me, knowing that there were people there, knowing that there was somebody there who just spotted that and just said, "How are you?" and wanted to know the answer. And if anybody watching this is going through their own period of battles and challenges, it is okay to not be okay. That's one thing that was something quite liberating for me to learn. But it is good to talk, and don't go through it on your own. You can't go through it on your own. You need somebody by your side, even if it's just one person, preferably 2 or 3 good people who can check up on you, who can talk to you. And even if you're not talking about your mental health, just having a laugh, just talking, just chatting, just living life together, that can be the difference between night and day. So yeah, really,
Mike, this is I think to talk about it on this kind of podcast or show is one outlet, and I feel I'm certainly not in a position of, I feel I don't know what the word is, authority on this particular subject matter, because it is such a powerful and important subject matter, that I think from my point of view it's just the case of awareness. And the most powerful thing you just said then is just having those friends around, or family members or whoever it may be, that can just actually ask those simple questions and just be aware that and to reach out. If you've not got that, reach out to somebody. And because we see and hear of terrible news stories all the time, unfortunately, still today. So clearly there's a lot more that needs to be done about mental health awareness and how to treat and help and be there and around for people. But I mean, not to shadow this important topic, but I know that you are an advocate of not just mental health, but accessibility in technology, as well as inclusivity. I mean, Mike, do you want to give us a little bit of your thoughts around those other 2 important topic areas as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, inclusivity, I try and in some ways I try and break away from that term to a certain degree, because it's kind of become one of those terms that everybody latches onto, and it's a tick box exercise. We're doing inclusion. Well, what do you mean by inclusion? Are you doing women in tech? Are you doing racial diversity? Are you doing accessibility, inclusion? Are you what do you mean by it? And I'm one of those that I push people to be bluntly honest. So it's like, okay, so you say you're doing inclusion. Tell me what you mean by that.
It's like an overloaded term, I guess. I know what you mean. Yeah, it's become overloaded.
It's a term that just captures so many things in one one basket. So yeah, I mean, I am a big sort of supporter of obviously gender and LGBTQ plus in our sphere that we operate in. But really, my focus over the last few years, I've been doing bits and pieces around working with diversity in terms of racial diversity, and working with some fantastic organizations there. But accessibility has been a real big one for me. It's I tell the story that it started with a conversation in a pub with a couple of friends, and I actually realized late last year that I was deluding myself, bizarrely, because I have a degenerative spinal condition. I've had two major sets of surgery, one at the top of my spine and one at the very bottom of my spine, set many years apart, but doctors don't know what's causing it. But there's a realistic chance that I could end up in a wheelchair at some point. I've got permanent nerve damage and I live with chronic pain. Just that's the reality of my life. The one thing that I'd never actually accepted to myself was that actually I have accessibility needs. I use accessibility tools. I use a vertical mouse. I use an ergonomic keyboard, because using regular ones actually caused me major pain and real discomfort. And so late last year, I kind of realized that this really nice potted story that I've been telling people of, a conversation in a pub with some friends that sounded really nice, was actually me deluding myself, and that there is a stigma around accessibility that exists in the minds of the people who use accessibility tools as much as within the rest of the workplace and society. Because I started talking to a few people and found out that they'd gone through that same journey of, well, yeah, I'm an accessibility advocate, but I don't need accessibility, to suddenly realizing actually I do. But if I go back to the pub, I was talking with two friends, and one of them, they have some really complex needs and accessibility requirements, and they said to me, "Do you capitalize hashtags?" I'm like, "You what?" And they're like, "Have you ever used a screen reader?" I'm like, well, other than playing one back in the old days of DOS and Creative Labs sound cards, no. And they're like, "You try sticking hashtags through a screen reader and they cannot read a hashtag because it doesn't know where one word ends and another word begins."
Right.
So if you capitalize the first letter of each word, camel case, Pascal case, whatever you want to call it, if you capitalize the first letter of each word, a screen reader can see that and it can read the words. And there's some famous examples, Susan Boyle and her album Party. There's Welcome to Penn Island, which if you write that all lowercase, You
Yeah.
can get some
Yeah.
fun ones.
Yes, indeed.
And I was just like, I'd never actually thought that, because all social media platforms advertise everything lowercase.
Mm.
And it's like, it's not just people who use screen readers. It's not just people with dyslexia who can struggle with that. I mean, I've been an avid reader since I don't know when. I would devour books, and I still do, at a rate of knots that people can't believe sometimes.
Yeah.
But I can look at long hashtags and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I've got it. And the other one is things like Twitter handles or web addresses. So, for example, Jonnychipz.
Mm-hmm.
You've got it all lowercase there.
Right, I'm fixing that now, Mike.
Which, and just to let your audience know, we did talk about this prior to the show, so I've not just sprung this on him because I'm not that cruel. But I mean, my own blog website is Heart of the Midlands, which is a really long URL, which I do have Heart 365 as well. But if now you've put it all in capitals,
so
that's
capital,
just as bad.
Is it really? Right, okay.
It's just capitalizing the initial letter of each word.
Okay, so
yeah,
like that then. So making sure. So if
capital
we had
C,
so
you want a capital C there.
Okay.
Because you're Jonnychipz.
Just to kind of separate the wordings. I'm with you. Yeah. Okay. So
bingo.
if I do right. So bingo. And then yours would be as it is anyway. So Heart 365, a bit like that. I'm with you. Yeah.
Just writing my
making it. Right, well, that's changed. That's changed for good now. But I mean, it's those kind of hints and tips. I was going to say, Mike, as you were talking earlier on about accessibility, I know Microsoft, as a tech company, have put in a lot of effort and a lot of they've moved things a lot further on for many different types of ailments. You know, from vision impairments to hearing impairments, and they've got a lot of tech. And I think from that perspective, you know, is a lot of this not just about the impairment or the disability for the person that has that thing, but of course the awareness of how tech can actually help with those things as well. I mean, what's your take on that, Mike?
It massively so. So 1 in 5 working age adults in the UK will have some form of accessibility requirement. Diagnosed. There are a lot more that are undiagnosed or who do not register as disabled. So, for example, I don't fit in that 1 in 5 because I'm not registered disabled.
Right.
But I use accessibility aids and accessibility tools. I use them on my computer. I use them physically as well as digitally. So I don't feature in that stat. So there's a huge number. There are over 1 billion people globally with a registered disability. That number is growing year on year. And when you think there are some countries like China and North Korea that do not release any numbers around that, you kind of think, well, that number is going to be a lot higher. So it is this massive thing, and the way I kind of sell it to people, and it's a sad thing that you have to sell it, but the way I sell it to people is, do you want to get an extra 20% user adoption on your IT project?
Right. Yeah.
Without costing you a penny. It's like, nobody's going to say no to that. Well, build with accessibility in mind. And it's getting easier. There are tools out there. A lot of it isn't a case of needing to use extra software or hardware. It's just about the way we think about building. So things like capitalizing the first letter of a word. For me, that took me 2 weeks of mentally checking every time I typed a hashtag before it became a habit. And in the last 2.5 years, there's been less than a handful of times where I've stumbled and missed it. And those occasions have usually been when I've kind of reacted emotionally to something and have been typing without thinking. So if we get ourselves into habits, it doesn't cost us any extra time. It doesn't cost any extra time to type a capital letter.
No, absolutely, yeah.
But it makes the world of difference to users. You're suddenly becoming more inclusive. Putting alt text in images. People do it on websites because image alt when you're writing HTML, but doing it in Word documents and PowerPoint slides and things like that. It doesn't really cost anything. I mean, yeah, okay, it takes a few extra seconds to type it in, but once you get in the swing of it, it doesn't take you any longer to type. This is a screenshot of a user interface showing this. But actually, those tags become a lot more helpful for so many more people. And there are things, there are a huge amount of things happening.
I was going to say, Mike, I did watch an accessibility presentation not too long ago where I think the hardware developers at Microsoft around Xbox and Xbox controllers have developed such a cool array of accessibility physical hardware devices as well.
So they came out with the Xbox Adaptive Controller, which is this fantastic piece of hardware where you can plug in all kinds of switches and control mechanisms that you can then map to an Xbox. And honestly, I cannot watch the advert that they released Super Bowl one year, which shows kids playing with this without crying. It gets me every time. And that's an expensive piece of hardware because it's quite specialist. Last year, Microsoft, don't know, you might not be able to see that. They came out with this tiny little box. It's a pack of stickers.
Right.
It's a pack of stickers. Simple thing. But the idea is that they're raised, they're textured. There's lots of different ones for putting on things like keyboards to raise certain keys, or to put on like Surface headphones or what have you, so you know where you can touch. And I mean, it's designed for the Microsoft Surface kit. I pick one up and I use it on endless pieces of the kit, just because of the fact that one of the things that, because I have nerve damage, I have issues with fine motor control. And sometimes my fingers can feel a lot number than they would for normal people. So for me, having those things that I can feel changes the way I can work immensely. So it doesn't have to be costly. It doesn't have to be expensive. Or it can be something life-changing that suddenly enables kids to join with all of their friends. HoloLens, AR, augmented reality and virtual reality. The scope and potential is huge. And the good thing is there are conversations going on as to how can we make sure this tech's accessible. But it's such a massive topic, and I could honestly talk your hind legs off for weeks about it. But it's just one of those things. Please, all I will say is, please don't think that accessibility doesn't apply to you talking to your listeners, because it does. There will be people, 70% of disabilities are hidden because of stigma, and because people feel they cannot be open about them. So you will be working with people who use accessibility tools.
Absolutely. And, absolutely. And I cast my mind back, and I've absolutely worked with people that use accessibility tools, which is, I think, the awesome thing to see from a technological advancement perspective, how somebody like Microsoft are building those kind of things into everyday pieces of software that we already know and love. But we might not know that these accessibility features are there. And I guess, is it on everybody? I suppose is the call to action now. It's a bit like any minority situation where the more people are aware of what it is and what can be done to help is to do that. Like you've just mentioned there, don't put camel case in, for hashtags or Twitter handles or social media, so computer readers can actually separate those words out and there's no change. Things like using objects like you've just described there, sticky things that go on physical devices so that people can use. Just being aware of these things, and then maybe it's a case that we should all go out and learn a couple of accessibility features that are available in software products, and make it a point to go and blog about it, or make it a point to go and do a video about it, and just raising that general awareness is probably key, because I think it's one of those things, isn't it, Mike, that as much as we know that we've got all this cool software around to help us do our day-to-day job, it also helps with these accessibility needs, but we just might not know about them. We might not know they're there. So I suppose a lot of it is to raise that awareness as well, would you say?
Very much so. Very much so, yeah.
Now, Mike, look, these have been, incredibly important topics. To be honest with you, I've never really touched on topics like that. I've spoken on this show about certain aspects of some of these topic areas, but I think, certainly from, I almost feel not worthy to be able to comment on these subject areas to a certain extent, because I don't want to do things like this a disservice, because they are so massively important. And I suppose just saying that isn't a caveat or a opting out of actually having an opinion, but I think it's a very profound thing that when you talk about things like accessibility, things like inclusivity, and mental health awareness, things like that, they all have been very much taboo subjects, and I wouldn't mind betting to a lot of people they probably still are taboo subjects that people just won't speak about. And I guess from my perspective, they are such massively important areas that even if a small little show like this raises the awareness to another 2 or 3 people to actually act on those things, don't just nod your head and say, yes, I understand what it is. Let's all try and act. Let's all do 1 or 2 things that go towards that positive reinforcement and pushing the awareness of these important subject areas out. That's what I would say on it, on the face of it, Mike. But like I say, it's been fascinating to hear your take on things, Mike. It has. But look, I'm not gonna move away from the question I normally ask all the guests, because I think it's still a valid question. But thank you for your time tonight, Mike, first and foremost. And like I said, can't reiterate enough. Those, hopefully people have listened to what you've had to say about these areas, and I've certainly taken a lot away from it, Mike, and hopefully others will. And together we can build these things up to where they need to be in society. But look, before we end the show, like I say, there is always one question I like to ask my guests, and this is one of these big open-ended questions of, why are we doing all this big, fast-paced change of learning and putting ourselves through all of this hard work, Mike? Where do you think we're headed in terms of technology? So I suppose the question would be, where do you think we're going to be in kind of 5 to 10 years with technology?
I think we are going through quite a seismic shift in technology at the moment. you can throw out the whole citizen developer and Power Platform enabling and raising up lots of people, and I would encourage people to apply that philosophy to accessibility, because if we did, then we'd make huge grounds there. But I think the whole thing with artificial intelligence, machine learning, they are going to become so much more prevalent in our everyday lives without us even realizing. I mean, so many people do not realize just how much they deal with AI on a daily basis. I mean, it doesn't have to be your smart home assistant, who I won't mention because I've got one of each, or one of the G and the AZ ones in here. But it doesn't have to be those voice assistants. It can just be using the search engines and the AI and algorithms that go into all that. And I think we're going to see a real change. I think COVID has accelerated what, I mean, I've been saying for 20 years that we should be moving towards hybrid working, because there's no reason for us not to. And now there really is no excuse. So I think, I really hope that we don't just go back to where we were 2 years ago. I really hope that we've taken these lessons on, that we've learnt. My worry is that we've become a lot more divisive in society. You're one side or the other. There's no sitting in the middle. And I think tech, if we're not careful, could go too far one way or the other.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, I suppose it's up to us to make sure that doesn't happen, though. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I think the community that we've got in the Microsoft world, we've got such amazing people in the community. And as we keep driving things forward and pushing things and talking to each other, if that keeps carrying on, then we're going to be in a really good place. And I'm excited. I think we're living in the digital revolution. We have been or the information revolution. We have been for a couple of decades or more now, 3 decades or more. But I think we're kind of reaching a point where all the groundwork that's gone on is going to start culminating in something really fascinating. And I'm excited. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be fun.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's definitely going to be an interesting few years leading up to where we're going. But yeah, certainly the placeholders, like you say, I'm with you on that AI take there, Mike. I think certainly all the place markers are in place now, aren't they? Ready and waiting to see what comes. But look, Mike, it's been a super fun chat. Thanks so much for giving your time up and coming on and saying hello to me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really appreciate it, Mike. I mean, before we call the show are there any last parting words you'd like to put out?
All I would say is, please, folks, when you're next time at an event or a user group, go and listen to a session on accessibility. I am shamelessly plugging Scottish Summit, which is Glasgow, 10th and 11th of June, in person. And I'll be there. I'll be speaking on accessibility. I'll be helping others with it. Please, just, I mean, if you find me, you'll find my talks that I've given. Go stick them on 3 times speed so you hear me like a chipmunk. But just get yourself on a learning journey, because if you take that first step, you're one step further than somebody who doesn't. And then you can take the next step and the next and the next. And that's how we make these journeys, by one foot in front of the other. So yeah, please come say hi at Scottish Summit. There you go. The organisers will be happy. I've given it.
We'll stick all the links, and the links to your YouTube channel and with your podcast on. They'll all be in the text below this. But look, it just leaves me to say thanks for being an awesome guest, Mike. And
thank you so much.
Not a problem. And I'll catch you on the socials at some point.
Yep, will do. You take care.
You too. Thanks, Mike. Cheers for now.
Bye.